Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. It is January 15th, 2025. Thanks for joining me today. Sorry for the late start. Of course, it's always par for the course, is a couple technical snafus I had just as I was going live. So thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the podcast. So we're going to get into the headlines in just a second. So last night, apparently, there was another ICE shooting. The person didn't die. The suspect who was shot him in the leg. So now we could question him. The ICE agent was attacked with a shovel and a broom by people that ran out of their house, the apartment, when they saw the ICE agent arresting a Venezuelan suspect who fled. So subsequently, these people came out, attacked the ICE officer. Then the suspect began punching the ICE officer, and the officer, fearing for his life, obviously, shot the suspect in the leg. Both the ICE officers, the ICE officer and the Venezuelan suspect, are in the hospital recovering. So we're going to get to that in just a second. Okay, well, thanks for joining me today. Let's just get into the news, and I'll try to work out this issue as we move forward. All right, let's read the news. All right, today we're going to start with the Federalist. DHS ICE agent ambushed, assaulted while arresting illegal alien in Minneapolis. The ICE officer shot the suspect in the leg in self-defense after being beaten with a shovel, says the Department of Homeland Security. Federal law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted traffic stop of an illegal alien from Venezuela who was released into the country by Joe Biden in 2022 when the subject fled in his vehicle and crashed into a parked car. After a foot chase, an ICE agent caught the man, who began violently assaulting the officer. While the subject was on the ground, while the subject and law enforcement were in a struggle on the ground, two subjects came out of a nearby apartment and also attacked the officer with a snow shovel and a broom handle. Very disturbing. Whatever you want to do, you want to attack police, you're likely going to lose. So, because they're more police, they certainly have the law behind them, and they have been tasked to do these legal immigrant removals. So whatever you believe in your head, like you're some sort of hero or whatever, saving a criminal, that's communism. Why? Because communists need the criminals to carry on. The article goes on. Fearing for his life and safety, he was being ambushed by three individuals. The officer fired a defensive shot to defend his life. The three amigos then ran back into the apartment and barricaded themselves inside. They were subsequently taken into custody. As of late Wednesday night, both the Venezuelan national and the ICE agent were being treated at the hospital. Just need to set up one more thing here. I don't know exactly what happened. There it is. Moving on to the next article here. This is the AP referring to the same situation there in Minnesota. Federal officer shoots person in the leg after being attacked during Minneapolis arrest. Federal officer shot a man in the leg in Minneapolis after being attacked with a shovel and broom handle while trying to make an arrest Wednesday. Subsequently, smoke filled the street Near the site of the shooting, as federal officers and protesters squared off, a group of officers wearing gas masks and helmets fired tear gas and grenades. It should be tear gas grenades. They didn't fire grenades into a small crowd while protesting. Protesters threw snowballs and chanted, "Our streets." Okay, so you can't throw snowballs at police. You can't throw anything at police. I mean, you can, but it makes you subject for arrest. That's assault. It's not a Subway sandwich. It's a snowball. Moving on. Post-millennial Minnesota AG, these Attorney General Keith Ellison rallies students against ICE, calls Renee Good a martyr. Renee Good, I want you to remember her name. She's a martyr. She sacrificed. So this is how the politicians play it up. They're goading their citizens into attacking federal law enforcement. Calling somebody a martyr is a call to arms to, I would say, a combatant group. But, we need to move on from there. Yeah, not getting I don't know what happened there. Let's see if we're getting, a feed. Yeah, looks like we are good. Huh. All right. Something screwed up there. I don't know exactly what happened. Huh. All right. Oh my God. It's never ending. Something screwed up there. I don't know. It's never ending. All right, moving on. PJ Media, Democrats might kick John Fetterman out of the party, the Democratic Party, for this. During an interview on Fox News, Fetterman revealed he has no problem with ICE rounding up criminal illegal aliens and sending them back to where they came from. Under Biden, which saw monthly crossing skyrocket to nearly 300,000, Fetterman said that's unsustainable, adding it shouldn't be unreasonable to want to secure a border and to do it in that way. He went on to say, round up all the criminals, deport them. They shouldn't have ever been here, and they definitely have to go. He acknowledged that not everyone being picked up by ICE is a criminal, but insisted that two things can be true. And it doesn't matter, even if people rounded up are illegal aliens, they get deported, regardless of whether they're criminals or not. We're not going to have a hearing on what illegal aliens get to stay in and who get to go. They all go. But the targeted enforcement is against criminals. And that has to be made clear. Like this Venezuelan guy in Minnesota, he was a criminal. There was a targeted motor vehicle stop to capture this person because he was a criminal. We're going to find out to be true. So the people that came out of their apartment are also criminals because they attacked a police officer, but they're defending a criminal. So this is more tribalism. Everybody thinks it's divide and conquer. They're putting people into tribes. You're with the criminals or the illegal aliens, or you're with ICE, making you make a choice. You could even be for illegal immigrants and saying we should change the laws to allow them to stay or what have you, and not be against law enforcement. But most people are too simple to make that distinction. Excuse me. Moving on. Minneapolis anti-ICE protesters hurl fireworks rocks at officers following shooting of Venezuelan migrant. The crowd is engaging in unlawful acts. They have thrown fireworks at police officers, and at multiple times, gas has been deployed. Police are attempting to disperse this unlawful assembly at this time. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara said at a press conference late on Wednesday. So this is even the Minneapolis police saying what is going on there. The crowd is engaging in unlawful acts. Throwing fireworks is unlawful. It's an assault on police officers. So Zero Hedge has the article, while this is all going on, left-wing chaos continues in Minneapolis as federal vehicles looted. Left-wing groups quickly accelerated into riots and looting of at least one federal vehicle that had a long rifle and ammunition inside. So now they're armed. Now they're stealing weapons from federal agents. You know where this is leading. Perry and I both have warned recently about a civil war brewing. Well, what do you need weapons for if you're not going to attack federal officers? It's very disturbing. And what is more disturbing is the fact that politicians are leading the cause here, and they're actually fomenting a civil war, which may very well start in Minnesota and branch off into other blue states, etc. And then those states will resist further delegations from the Trump administration, from a Republican administration that makes civil war. All right, let's see if I can fix this thing now. I don't know what's happening. All right, at least I got that working. Thanks again for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, and share this episode. All right, moving on. Just the News has the article. Supreme Court punts on tariffs, rules on warrantless searches, election suits, and double convictions. The latter rulings are not of that much concern. We're going to get to one of the rulings in a minute, which has to do with Illinois and mail-in ballots, which is a win for Republicans. But the most important thing here is the Supreme Court punts on tariffs, which means they may not rule on this for till the end of the session, another 8 or 10 months, or 6 months. I forget when the Supreme Court breaks. Before the summer? So July, 6 months, which is good for Trump. So Trump can keep the tariffs in place while the Supreme Court rules on it. More news from One America News. Department of Homeland Security ICE officer hit by Renee Good's vehicle suffered internal bleeding. So the officer was hit by the car, and apparently it's more than what Jacob Fry said, who is the mayor of Minneapolis. He said, I get more damage after being hit by my refrigerator door. He suffered internal bleeding. The extent of internal bleeding, is yet to be seen. The reality here is that a contusion, a bruise, is technically internal bleeding. So I just want to be fair and objective as far as this is concerned. The nature of the internal bleeding has not been released, and obviously making it sound like he was more severely injured than previously thought makes this better looking for the administration and for the federal government. Story goes on to say Immigration and Customs Enforcement Officer Jonathan Ross, who shot and killed Minneapolis protester Renee Nicole Good, is reported to have suffered internal bleeding after Good allegedly attempted to run him over in an act of rebellion towards immigration officers during a targeted immigration enforcement operation in South Minneapolis. Now, I was very clear with this, is that did she try to run him over? She was trying to escape arrest. And that is the key to understand that. She seemed to turn the wheels a little, so it looked like she was trying to avoid him. Intent is not the important thing here. The important thing in here is she did strike him with a car. So if she killed him, it maybe would have been manslaughter because she didn't do it on purpose. But however, if you're commanded by police, law enforcement, to do something, by law, you have to oblige. Your retort, your response is of legal and clerical means. In other words, you have to fight him judicially in court, and to litigate the action of the police officer. You can't wrestle with police if they're trying to put you under arrest. A lot of times they just want to detain you to determine whether or not you're a threat or whether or not charges will be filed against you, whether you're going to be arrested and detained further, because they have to investigate. A lot of times they don't know who you are, what your intent is, so forth and so on. Like I keep saying, I'm not a fan of police by any means. I respect what they do. It's a very hard job. You have to deal with the worst of the worst, the dregs, the bane, not in all cases, but, they have a hard job. So I respect them in that regard. But not a boot licker or holster sniffer or anything like that. The point is for Democrats out there, most liberals are Democrats. If you're a Democrat and you always talk about democracy, laws are arrived at democratically. They're not dictated from on high to oppress you. These laws are found and developed and passed via your representatives federally, or in a lot of cases, your representatives locally in the city council or in the state legislature. And they vote on these laws. Your representatives vote on these laws. So don't take it out on the messenger, on the mailman, on the police officer. Talk to your representatives. And you want to change the law? I can change the law. You can try to change the law. You have to get a majority, which means you have to argue your case. All right, there's more PJ Media. First responder called Ice Watch mob to protect Trendaragua gangsters in Portland shooting. Believe it or not, Andy No discovered that a first responder, an ambulance driver, or EMT, alerted Portland Ice Watch to do what they do: gather a mob, protest, block ice, and protect the bad guys. I don't know how first responder, usually they side with law enforcement because they see what these people do every day. But just to be clear, they're extremists, extreme leftists, communists, socialists in every aspect of society. They're your baristas, they're your ambulance drivers, they're your house cleaners, they're your lawyers, they're your school teachers, obviously politicians. They could very well be your plumbers, et cetera, et cetera. They're everywhere. It's a conspiracy, and they act in concert. So this doesn't really surprise me that somebody, even if it's a first responder, is reporting to ICE Watch, which is illegal as far as I'm concerned, because the object of ICE Watch isn't to document, it's to thwart law enforcement. If you're just there to document, but it's just like the body cam article I went over yesterday, is Black Lives Matter wanted body cams on all the cops so it would show all the police brutality that's going on. What did it do? It vindicated police. So go ahead and film. What you're going to find is it's going to vindicate police. Please show me ICE arrests that have been, objectively cruel or, violent, excessively violent or whatever. You have to be careful because arrest procedure is a violent, Hey, and like I said, I'm not always the fan of the cops. Sometimes, when they put somebody under arrest, like an old man, they slam people to the ground. That's not necessary. All right. Moving on. New York Times, 6 prosecutors quit over push to investigate ICE shooting victim's widow. Joseph H. Thompson, a career federal prosecutor who was the acting attorney for Minnesota last year, was among those who resigned, and the Justice Department sought to examine the woman's supposed ties to activist groups. Yes. The thing is, Nicole Good's wife, Rebecca, was the militant, and she's the one that radicalized Nicole and got her involved in these direct actions. That's why she felt the need to blame herself after the shooting. She should be investigated. All these left-wing groups should be investigated, and they're pretty hidden. It's the Russian doll. It's a shell within a shell within a shell company. But as I often say, it all began with organizing for action, organizing for Obama, organizing for America, the OFA, which is since dissolved, been absorbed by the Democratic Party. But that's only after it launched a bunch of other groups. But you could still, Obama's legacy agency, the legacy company, part of legacy group, still distributes training, pamphlets, tactics. They're still being employed. What Obama did and what OFA did is they took a lot of strategies and tactics used by the Occupy movement, and they absorbed that into the training of leftist protesters. And they used that pretty effectively. The CIA did too. The umbrella thing, that came from Occupy. And the CIA exported it to the Hong Kong protests, et cetera, which is very effective to block chemical irritants, but also block surveillance. It was actually the umbrella tactic came from intelligence, which is being able to block yourself from satellites. All right. There's more to this story, though. 6 federal prosecutors from Minnesota resigned on Tuesday over the Justice Department's push to investigate the widow of a woman killed by ICE agent and the department's reluctance to investigate the shooter, according to the people, knowledge of their decision. As I said previously, the point is it's the conspiracy. People, especially of the leftist mindset, people think, oh, this is cut and dry. This is an over-aggressive police officer, when he reacted like most police officers would act. And they're using that to obfuscate the true intent of organizations witting or unwittingly connected to an overall scheme to um, undermine the sovereignty of the United States, realistically, the individual liberties enshrined in the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. But I go over that every day. Okay, back to the article. Mr. Thompson's resignation came after a senior Justice Department official pressed for a criminal investigation into the actions of the widow of Renee Nicole Good, the Minneapolis woman killed by ICE agents on Wednesday. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Moving on, though. Just quickly, Fox News Obama wingman Eric Holder defended Walz' vetting. Then Minnesota's fraud scandal erupted. Obama's former attorney general led Harris's VP selection process before a massive Minnesota welfare fraud schemes came to light. Eric Holder's the worst. He's a communist. He's a fucking communist for sure. Eric Holder's the worst. He was the architect of the gun running scheme at the southern border. And also, I think this weekend I'm going to do a little investigative piece on OFA, just to brief people up in OFA. He was the lieutenant for OFA, Eric Holder, and also famously quoted as saying, if we go high, if we go low, if they go low, we go lower. I think that's what he said. Or they hit high, we go low, or something like that. Zero Hedge, senators want to ban Chinese students from government labs. This is from Zero Hedge. And I talked about this yesterday, and I put a short up referring to how the Chinese communists got the chimeric virus, COVID-2, the coronavirus, is we developed it in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina, with Chinese scientists, but we wouldn't let them take it. But we did ship versions of it to a BSL-4 lab in Canada. I think it was in Saskatchewan. In any case, a Chinese scientist there and her students, all Chinese nationals, managed on smuggling out what I believe was COVID-2, a lot of different protected viral samples. And then the scientist fled to China, as did her students. So senators, 11 U.S. senators wrote to Energy Secretary Chris Wright on Tuesday seeking a ban on Chinese nationals from U.S. national labs, particularly the BSL-4 labs that deal with these very deadly pathogens. They go on to say, continuing to give access to the cutting edge work performed at these laboratories to Chinese nationals who will turn everything they know over to the Chinese Communist Party directly undermines the purpose of Genesis mission. The co-signers were Senator Tom Cotton, Mike Lee of Utah, James Reich of Idaho, Jim Justice of West Virginia, John Cornyn of Texas, John Barrasso of Wyoming, James Langford of Oklahoma, Dave McCormick of Pennsylvania, Jerry Moran of Kansas, Todd Young of Indiana, Ted Budd of North Carolina. He should, Chapel Hill being in his state. More news from the post-millennial. Afghan national convicted for attempted honor killing of sister taken into custody by ICE in New York. When we say ICE is arresting the worst of the worst, this is exactly what we mean. As a side note, I don't have the headline here, but as a side note, Donald Trump just closed the last refugee camp I think it's in Qatar, for resettling Afghan immigrants. Moving on, Zero Hedge. U.S. Navy sailor sentenced to nearly 17 years in prison for selling military secrets to China. This is another reason we need to be careful with Chinese nationals. And China is our adversary, with Chinese nationals in the United States. Jin Chao, also known as Patrick Wei, was arrested on espionage charges in August of 2023 after reporting for duty aboard the USS Essex, an amphibious assault ship based in San Diego. Wei, a naturalized U.S. citizen, was convicted. See, so he's not even a Chinese national. But what people have to understand is sometimes even naturalized citizens here in the United States, they have family back home, and their family back home is threatened by the Chinese Communist Party unless these naturalized citizens spy for China, or they're asked to become citizens, and so they're more readily trusted. Obviously, if you're not going to be allowed into the U.S. military if you're not a citizen. I mean, you can be, I suppose. So he's facing espionage and 5 other criminal counts, including conspiracy to commit espionage, the unlawful export of, and conspiracy to export technical data related to defense articles in the violation of the Arms Export Control Act and the International Traffic in Arms Regulation after a 5-day trial in August of 2025. Defendant compromised the U.S. Navy's entire fleet of amphibious assault ships by sending the Chinese government thousands of pages of technical information about the fleet's complex ship systems and how the U.S. Navy operates and maintains those systems. Bad news, for sure. More news from Associated Press. With good reason, U.S. will suspend immigration visa processing from 75 countries over public assistance concerns. And they're talking about fraud here. 75 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, Somalia, whose nationals the Trump administration is deemed likely to require public assistance while living in the United States. It's all poor people. That's why this country usually didn't allow poor people into the country, because they're immediately put on public assistance or figure out ways to get access to public assistance. Other countries include Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, Antigua, Barbuda, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahamas, Bangladesh, Barbados, Belarus, Belize, Bhutan, Bosnia, Brazil, Burma, Cambodia, Cameroon, Cape Verde, Colombia, Congo, Cuba, Dominica, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Fiji, Gambia, Georgia, Ghana, Grenada, Guatemala, Guinea, Haiti, Iran, Iraq, Ivory Coast, Jamaica, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Lebanon, Liberia, Libya, Macedonia, Moldova, Mongolia, Montenegro, Morocco, Nepal, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Pakistan, Republic of Congo, Russia, Rwanda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Tanzania, Thailand, Togo, Tunisia, Uganda, Uruguay, Uzbekistan, and Yemen. That's all 75. I laughed because of Liberia. If people didn't know, the U.S. set up Liberia. President James Monroe did, in an effort to create a colony to repatriate African slaves. And some did go. It never amounted to much. But I find it funny that they're not allowing people from Liberia to come to the United States, given its history. All right, next up, Fox News Illinois father says Pritzker shows indifference to his daughter being killed by an illegal immigrant. Joe Abraham sent a letter to Illinois governor after Katie Abram was killed by Guatemalan national. It was indeed a car accident, but just like anything else, they shouldn't be here. So if he wasn't here, he wouldn't have been driving drunk and he wouldn't have killed that guy's daughter. Next article, Associated Press. Venezuela war powers resolution fails in Senate after 2 Republicans bow to Trump pressure. Ooh, the Associated Press says Trump pressure. Senate Republicans vote to dismiss a war powers resolution Wednesday that would have limited President Donald Trump's ability to conduct further attacks on Venezuela after 2 GOP senators reversed course on supporting the legislation. Who was it? Yes, Josh Hawley flipped. So all the talk about Josh Hawley actually worked. Thanks out there, if any of you out there from Missouri and called your senator after hearing this program. I don't know what that was, Josh, to be honest with you. He must have heard from his constituents because it's like, what the fuck? You know, the Democrats are in lockstep, so we have to be in lockstep. That's why people like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, they got to go. I would say Mitch McConnell too, but he's going whether he likes it or not. PJ Media has the article, though. Vance breaks tie, kills bill to limit Trump's military action. So it was a tie, thanks to Josh Hawley. Bipartisan war powers resolution aimed at limiting the Donald Trump's administration's ability to conduct further strikes in or against Venezuela without congressional approval. All the Democrats voted for it, as did 5 Republicans: Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Josh Hawley, and Todd Young. But those 2 reversed course. And I guess J.D. Vance had to cast the tiebreaker. More from Fox News. House Republican House Republican recognizes transgender Dem Sarah McBride as the gentleman from Delaware. The People's House recognizes basic biology, Representative Andrew Clyde said on a post on X. You funny. I think it's all right to mock. I don't care if you're offended. It's not against the law. There's no law that compels language. Technically, I can call you whatever the fuck I want. So this compelled language shit and the fact that transgender folks insist into a tizzy that you don't use the proper pronoun. You don't misgender me, or you don't dead name me. To them, that's like a stake through the heart. Like I said, if you're an adult, you can really do whatever you want. But compelling other people to go along with your madness, it's like my wife has OCD. And so I said, I don't care. If you need to, shut things 3 times to make you feel safe, okay. But don't ask me to do it. So, I mean, everybody's a little crazy. That can certainly be measured, and we could always debate who's crazy and how much and why. Certainly worth, it's worth debate. Post-millennial OBGYN refuses to answer Senator's question on if men can get pregnant during hearing on abortion pills. I don't know how we can take you seriously in your claims to be a person of science if you won't level with us on this basic issue. So here's Josh Hawley's back in the news. On Wednesday, a Senate Committee on Health education, labor, and pensions hearing regarding the safety of abortion pills. An OBGYN refused to say whether men could get pregnant. The question was first asked to Dr. Nisha Verma from Senator Ashley Moody. Ms. Verma, Moody asked, can men get pregnant? And then she goes, Verma first corrected Moody, saying, Dr. Verma. Dr. Verma. I I hesitated there because I wasn't sure whether the conversation was going where the conversation was going or what the goal was. So this bothers the piss out of me with leftist weirdos, postmodern subjectivists. They always have to like question your question. It doesn't matter where the conversation is going. You're there to answer fucking questions. Just answer the questions. Verma replied, I do take care of patients with different identities. I take care of many women. I take care of people with different identities. And so that's where I paused. I think, I wasn't sure where you were going with that. I don't know. Where they were going with that is, can men get pregnant? People that were born male, okay, that are male, can they get pregnant? Because it's women who want to become men and then call themselves men. I went through this yesterday. If you think you're the president just because you put on an orange wig and you paint your face orange, you can't go sit in the Oval Office and have people call you president of the United States. They won't do it. There's no difference here. I'm a woman inside. What does that even mean? It's people keep confusing their emotions with their psychology, your basic mental ability, your intellect. One is if you think something, that doesn't necessarily make it so. And if you feel something, that doesn't necessarily make it so either. That's where objective reality comes in. Objective reality means it's like you and a bunch of other people figure out what's real. And that's the problem with allies is, you're lending credence to mental illness, gender dysphoria. All right. Zero Hedge, initial jobless claims plunge back to near record 56-year lows. That is great news. Just the News reports House Republicans have enough votes to hold Clintons in contempt of Congress, Comer reveals. Also great news. I hope they do it. I hope they put him in jail. New York Post, SCOTUS rules Illinois. And this is what I was talking about before, was that SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, punted on tariffs, so they're not going to decide on that until later in the term. But they did decide on this, which is SCOTUS rules Illinois GOP rep can challenge state mail-in ballot rules in case with 2028 election implications. Supreme Court ruled on Wednesday, allowing Representative Mike Bost's lawsuit challenging his home state of Illinois' mail-in ballot policy to move forward, issuing an opinion that could have major implications for future elections. Indeed. In a 7-2 decision, the High Court determined that Bost and 2 Illinois primary delegates for President Trump who joined his suit have standing to sue despite lower courts concluding that they didn't provide evidence of harm. Candidates have a concrete and particularized interest in the rules that govern the counting of votes in their elections, regardless of whether those rules harm their electoral prospects or increase their cost of their campaigns, wrote Chief Justice Roberts in the majority. Right, so he has the right to sue. They're not even challenging the constitutionality of mail-in ballots, which is the problem. opens the avenue for fraud, and that's what we get. Fraud. The pandemic is over. There's no need for mail-in ballots anymore. It's actually mail-out ballots. You used to have absentee ballots where you would request the absentee ballot. You have to prove who you are. It would be sent to you, and then you mail it back in. Now it's just they mail it, especially in blue states, they mail out however many registered voters they have in the state, 50 million or 20 million or 10 million or whatever. They mail out 10 million ballots, and miraculously, they get them all back. Here's another breaking headline. Just the news. Secret Service suspends agent on vice president's detail over leaked video. You might have heard about this. This is the James O'Keefe issue. Secret Service agent who was on Vice President J.D. Vance's security detail was suspended this week after he was recorded in an undercover video talking about sensitive parts of his job. The video was recorded by undercover reporter for conservative activist James O'Keefe and was verified by the Secret Service as authentic. The video shows the agent talking to a woman. He believed he was meeting for a date. During the date, the agent talked about serving in Vance's security detail, including sharing information about the movement of Vance to and from his home at the Naval Observatory, which is classified information. So he's put on leave. Good. You should be fired. You can go on dates if you want, but you can't reveal classified information. I should have put this one with the job numbers, with the unemployment numbers. Fox News, CNN called out for framing of inflation under Trump versus Biden in viral post. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt quoted the viral tweet calling the outlet's framing of inflation with the caption CNN fake news. U.S. inflation remained at 2.7 in December, underscoring persistent cost of living challenges. With 2.7, anything under 3 is actually low. This disparity in framing prompted Phillips to upload an image showing both statements, pointing out the difference between how CNN framed 6% inflation under Biden versus 2.7 inflation under Trump. And CNN had originally posted U.S. inflation is still high, but it's falling, noting the previous month's consumer price index measured 6%, down from January 6.4%, all of which is problematic because 6 is super high for the United States. And 2.7 is low average, 3% is really the mark, 2% is considered ideal. You don't really want it under 2%, at least the Fed doesn't, because that's too low. But any inflation devalues the currency, raises prices. But, 2% is nominal. You wouldn't even notice it at the supermarket. But 6% on top of 9%, on top of 5%, on top of 4%, like under the Biden administration, it was compounded to about 23%. That's a quarter of a dollar. It's a huge amount. And that's what you're still seeing, that influence spread across the economy and among prices, is you didn't feel it all right away, but it kind of trickles down when everybody has to start paying more for stuff. Like suppliers don't want to charge you more right off the bat, but when they get hit with their higher costs, they got to make it up somewhere, either through shrinkflation, they'll give you less for the same amount, or raise prices. But the whole egg thing was because Biden was killing chickens. New York Post, California Republicans launch plan to take down Newsom's Prop 50. So the 3-judge panel ruled in favor of Democrats, but Republicans intend to fight California's congressional redistricting plan all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court after a 3-judge panel ruled in favor of Democrats' gerrymandering efforts with Proposition 50, which was suspect from the beginning because only a couple of years earlier, the electorate voted for a bipartisan panel to handle redistricting. And so Proposition 50 basically got rid of that bipartisan panel and left it up to the supermajority of Democrats to redistrict. California Republican Party will be seeking an emergency injunction from the Supreme Court of the United States, said Corinne Rankin, chairwoman of the California Republican Party. Rankin thanked the three-judge panel for their thoughtful and timely work and a well-reasoned dissenting opinion by Judge Kenneth K. Lee better reflects our interpretation of the law and the facts, which will reassert the Supreme Court. It was the same thing in Texas, where there was one dissent. And even before the dissenting judge of the three-judge panel could publish his dissent, the three-judge panel, the two other judges, published their release, their ruling. New York Times, Trump says civil rights led to white people being very badly treated. President Trump's comments were a blunt distillation of his administration's racial politics, which rest on the belief that white people have become the real victims of discrimination in America. That is untrue. That is so untrue. And the reason it's untrue is because during this long interview with the New York Times, they baited him constantly. And he answered appropriately, which was, although original civil rights did great things for the black community, people of color, etc. However, in the 21st century, most recently, when most of the gains have already been realized, the civil rights has been used to bludgeon white people as oppressors by politicians and other people as well, by everybody, insisting that there's some sort of white supremacy, structural oppression and shit. It doesn't exist. And I say that factually. There's nowhere where you can point to U.S. code or municipal or state code that structurally oppresses anybody. Look at Oprah Winfrey. Was she oppressed? Look at Barack Obama. He rose to the highest office in the land twice. Was he oppressed? They're mayors of various cities that are black. Were they oppressed? I think I would like to see more black governors, maybe. But the point he was trying to make, and we'll get to the story right now, is that he said a lot of people were very badly treated. Yeah, whites most recently. But the way the New York Times frames it is he's talking about whites in the 1960s. That's not what he's talking about. White people were very badly treated, where they did extremely well and they were not invited to go to university or college. He's talking about college admissions, and that's most recently. He said an apparent reference to affirmative action in college admissions. So I would say that in a way, I think it's unfair in certain cases. In certain cases. So he's specific. I think it was also at the same time it accomplished some very wonderful things, but it also hurt a lot of people. People that deserve to go to college or deserve to get a job were unable to do that. So it was reverse discrimination. Indeed. When I was working in journalism, I had some black woman come up to me and said, we were talking about what I did. And I said, yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years, 20 years at the time, whatever. She looks at me and she goes, it's about time that a black person had your job. And I was completely taken aback. I was like, what? Oh my God. we're gonna stay in my state here. It's just like, you've been reading the 1619 Project, haven't you? Like, I can't rise on my own merit. Like, it was hard enough. It's hard enough to rise on your own merit. It's not easy for people. It's very competitive out there for white or black or whatever. I just don't understand. If I was in charge of hiring, of course, I would give all candidates their due review. Despite color or anything, that's not me. I mean, do people need to be educated more on that? Yeah, but I don't think people should go like, oh, you're black and not as good, so you get the job. Yeah, I think it should be merit-based. But if a black candidate exceeds the other candidates or even matches the merit of other candidates, sure. Why not? I would probably more likely lean to a black candidate if he was probably tied with someone, a white person of equal merit. Maybe. It depends. Maybe it depends what the personal attributes were and what, I guess maybe I'd look at the diversity of the newsroom, right? I obviously weigh all the factors, but just because what has happened as of late is you're taking people with less merit just because of diversity. Anyway, sorry, just belabored that, my personal opinion. New York Post, ex-New York Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCaughey running for governor in Connecticut. So this is my home state. Good, we got to get rid of that fucking Democrat, Ned Lamont, who's a moron, by the way. Former New York Governor Betsy McCaughey is kicking off her campaign for Connecticut. McCaughey, 77, said she's filling out official paperwork Thursday declaring her bid for a Republican nomination to lead the Constitution state. That's where I live. She's running to stop Hartford's war on homeowners, get rid of lefty Governor Ned Lamont housing law, halt soaring property taxes, and relieve almost all seniors of any property tax burden at all. But there's more. Where is it? Oh, it must have been further down in the article. Sorry about that. So what we have in Connecticut is during COVID, poor people were given free electricity. So now, because of that subsidy, everybody else has to pay an additional tax to pay for that subsidy. Because poor people were given free electricity during COVID. And that's what people said. All of a sudden, this law went into effect and electricity rates doubled. I thought it was in here. Yeah. I thought they had, I read the electricity thing in the story, but it's not there. All right, more headlines. Just the news. China wants to dethrone U.S. as world superpower, DOD says, after old reports cheered Beijing's rise. This is true. Just over a decade ago, when the Pentagon was welcoming the rise of China. Why would they do that? They're our adversary. Pentagon reports between 2006 and 2011, during the presidencies of George W. Bush and Barack Obama, where the Defense Department repeatedly spoke of the U.S. welcoming China's rise, with the reports even bragging about the extent to which the U.S. had facilitated China's ascent on the world stage. Why would we do that? Does it make sense now? I would recommend reading a book. It's not very well written, but it's a great book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy, where it details the wealthy elites backing of socialist communist parties and states, including the Soviet Union, including communist China. I mean, the CIA double-crossed Chiang Kai-shek to put Mao in power. Why would they do that? Why would they aid in the ascendancy of China? Why would Bill Clinton sell sensitive missile technology to China? New York Times again, nearly 5 million accounts removed under Australia's new social media ban. Governments around the world are watching the rollout of the landmark law, which made it illegal for those under 16 to have accounts. Not to be mistaken, two things. Australia is under the thumb of the Chinese communists, if you didn't know. Trump, not knowing this, decided to sell sensitive advanced submarines to Australia, who will then transfer them to China. You'll see. Whoops, a Chinese submarine sold to them by the U.S. disappeared or sunk or something. So also, this social media ban is touted, oh, we're saving the kids. This is a way to ban social media for everyone or for select people. So they're doing it just to 16 and under now, but this is going to be a model for banning people, maybe me, maybe you, off social media. Story goes on to say, nearly 5 million social media accounts belonging to Australian teenagers have been deactivated or removed a month after the landmark law, barring those younger than 16 from using the services took effect, the government said. The announcement was the first reported metric reflecting the rollout of the law, which is being closely watched by several other countries, weighing whether the regulation can be a blueprint for protecting children from the harms of social media or a cautionary tale highlighting the challenges of such attempts. Like I said, it's a blueprint for banning people or deactivating accounts of people, whoever the government deems. See, do you understand? The government deems people. They decide. And why do they get to decide who gets to be on social media and who doesn't? Usually it's up to the social media company who decides that one of their guidelines have been violated. So their guidelines have been violated, and then they remove your account. And maybe their guidelines are arrived at by discussions with a government, maybe, to decide what is obviously lawful and what's prudent. But I don't think that's prudent at all. I don't think governments should be deciding what kind of services you get to use and you don't get to use. However, the caveat here is I do believe social media is bad for you, adults, children, what have you, because it's mind control. What was the experiment? It's when you're in a group of people, your peers move the perception window for you. So you rely on what your peers think. And so this is just taking that model out of a social reality and put it into a social construct online. And then they could use sock puppets or chatbots to reinforce whatever it is they want you to think. Forget what that experiment was called. The one with the lines where they decided, you know, if certain people gave the wrong answer, even if you knew better, you'd side with people giving the wrong answer. All right, more news. Bloomberg, Xi welcomes stream of leaders shaken by Trump's New World Order. Trump's New World Order? His approach leaves leaders eager to engage Xi so they aren't sidelined by U.S.-China maneuvering. Go ahead, pick a side. Freedom or not freedom. But it's not Trump's New World Order. it's Trump restoring a world order that is free for the individual, sovereign for the individual, sovereign for states. Not the New World Order, which is really the elite's New World Order, which puts China at the top, which is an authoritarian government dictated by a technocracy, which removes all individual rights. What happened here? Is that it? I guess so. Isn't life wonderful? Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment. How do we do? Minute. 6 minutes over. An hour and 6 minutes. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically, so stay hip to the trick. Join me every day, Monday through Friday. Live stream 10 a.m. on Rumble, YouTube as well. Or join me on social media. Get Our Minds, Facebook, X, True Social, Substack. All right, thanks again for joining me today. Sorry about these technical snafus. I don't know what happened with Rumble today. Actually, it wasn't Rumble as much as it was my browser. I clicked one thing and it completely shit the bed. All right, thanks for joining me. Don't forget to check out episode 133 of Tuesdays with Perry. And I'll see you tomorrow. Respect.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. This is all a conspiracy. Don't you know that it's a conspiracy there?
American, I have rights.